If you're constantly exhausted by the endless noise of health tracking, rigid food rules, and wellness optimization, I want you to just take a deep breath. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're stepping away from all that anxiety. Instead, we're diving into a modern, neuroscience-backed protocol for true nervous system regulation and metabolic longevity. We are going to look at the hard science of how to deeply nourish your body, quiet your mind, and most importantly, rebuild trust with your own biology. So why does trying to be healthy feel so incredibly exhausting? Honestly, so many of us are dealing with absolute burnout, intense brain fog, and a nervous system that constantly feels on edge. We're bombarded daily with rigid food rules, tracking apps, and all these external metrics that try to dictate exactly when, what, and how much we should eat. But here's the catch. Rather than making us feel vibrant and alive, this hypervigilance actually acts as a hidden stressor. It spikes our cortisol, drains our cognitive energy, and leaves us in a state of perpetual fatigue. I want you to think about this profound paradigm shift for a second. Voluntary starvation and famine feel the exact same to your biology. When you restrict your eating based on some external rule, like, say, skipping a meal just to save calories, your cells literally cannot tell the difference between a modern diet and an actual life-threatening famine. And the result? Your body panics. It floods your nervous system with stress hormones just to protect you. Section 1. The hidden burnout trap. Okay, so what's actually happening under the hood when we ignore physical hunger? Well, we trigger a massive defensive biological cascade. First, your blood glucose drops rapidly, which instantly impairs your focus and cognitive clarity. Then, to conserve energy, your thyroid hormones decrease and your metabolic rate slows to a crawl. But the real kicker here is ghrelin, your body's primary hunger hormone. It spikes sharply. This hormonal surge entirely bypasses your rational brain. It creates this urgent, primal drive to eat, flooding your system with stress and forcing you to seek out quick energy. Listen, it's not a lack of willpower. It's just a perfectly functioning survival mechanism. Section 2. The neuroscience of hunger. Let's break this down a bit more, because understanding the difference between physical and emotional hunger is an absolute game changer. Physical hunger is a true biological urge for cellular energy. It builds gradually. You might feel a growling stomach or notice a subtle dip in your focus, and when you're physically hungry, a wide variety of foods will satisfy you. Emotional hunger, on the other hand, hits you suddenly. It's driven by a dysregulated nervous system desperately seeking a dopamine hit to soothe stress or burnout. It usually demands highly specific comfort foods, and unfortunately often leaves you feeling guilty afterward. Recognizing this distinction is really your first step to reclaiming your cognitive clarity. Yet modern diet culture practically demands that we ignore these biological realities. And the result is staggering. Look at this. Restrained dieting has a 97% failure rate for weight regain within 3 years. Relying on external restriction is a biologically failed therapeutic model. The science shows it actively drives depressive symptoms, weight cycling, and systemic burnout. It is definitely time to try something that actually aligns with our human biology. Section 3. Rewiring the gut-brain connection. So, what's the solution? It lies in something called interoceptive awareness. This is the ultimate biological feedback loop, and it's the absolute foundation of intuitive eating. Think of it as your ability to accurately perceive and respond to the physical sensations happening right inside your own body, specifically your hunger and fullness cues. We are actually born with this innate capacity to self-regulate our energy intake based on precise biological needs. But years of external food rules have effectively severed that connection for a lot of us. When we contrast the data between restrained dieting and intuitive eating, the results are just undeniable. Restrained dieting leads to high weight cycling and heavily elevates the risk of body shame and low self-esteem, basically keeping your body in a chronic state of cortisol-spiking stress. Intuitive eating, however, flips the entire script. By relying on internal, interoceptive cues instead of rigid external rules, it actually helps regulate your set point weight and improves your HDL, that's your good cholesterol. Psychologically, it significantly decreases depression, anxiety, and binge eating. It builds profound emotional resilience. Section 4. Rebalancing your dopamine. Which brings us to a really fascinating concept, the habituation principle. When you give yourself unconditional permission to eat, you neutralize the forbidden status of certain foods. Think about it. When a food is no longer off limits, it loses its intense novelty. Over time, you literally rewire your brain, and the dopamine reward response to that specific food naturally declines. By removing the restriction, you allow your brain to habituate, which naturally prevents that uncontrollable biological urge to binge. This entire neuroscientific approach is structured around the 10 principles of intuitive eating. Now, I want you to view these not as a new set of rigid rules, but as a holistic, deeply compassionate self-care framework that integrates physical instinct, emotion, and rational thought. It starts with rejecting the diet mentality and challenging your internal food police. Then it moves into honoring your biological hunger, feeling your fullness, and making peace with food to discover the satisfaction factor. It extends into honoring your feelings without using food, respecting your body's unique genetic blueprint, feeling the energizing difference of mindful movement, and finally, honoring your health with gentle nutrition. Section 5. The Biofeedback Scale. All right, so how do we actually cultivate this interoceptive awareness day to day? It requires a few actionable daily habits. First, remove external distractions while eating. Yes, that means putting the phone away so your brain can actually register the meal. Second, check in regularly to assess the physical sensations in your stomach. Third, just pause mid-meal. Ask yourself, does this still taste good? How full am I getting? And finally, try to stop eating when you feel comfortably satisfied and nourished, rather than waiting until you're uncomfortably stuffed. To help visualize this, we use the Hunger Satiety Scale. Consider this the ultimate user manual for your gut-brain access. It's essentially a dial from 1 to 10. The goal here isn't perfection, it's just awareness. You really want to aim to stay within the optimal zone, right around a 4 to a 7. You initiate eating when you're at a 3 or 4, so you're moderately or mildly hungry, but way before you hit that primal ravenous state of a 1 or 2. And ideally, you pause and stop eating when you reach a 6 or 7, fully satisfied and comfortable, before tipping into that heavy, overstretched feeling of an 8, 9, or 10. Section 6. Sustainable Longevity and Resilience. And that leads us right into the concept of gentle nutrition. Listen, you do not have to eat perfectly to be healthy. One meal, one snack, or even one day of eating a certain way is not going to suddenly compromise your overall health. True biological resilience is shaped by consistent patterns over a long period of time. It's an integration of your inner attunement with flexible, rational, gentle nutrition. Progress, not perfection, is what actually regulates your nervous system. And the clinical science thoroughly backs this up, revealing the incredible capacity of the human body to heal when we finally listen to it. In an 8-year longitudinal study called Project Eat, researchers found that intuitive eaters had a statistically lower body mass index, lower triglycerides, and higher good cholesterol. Strikingly, a higher intuitive eating score over time was associated with a 71% lower odds of binge eating. They also observed significantly lower depressive symptoms and lower body dissatisfaction. This weight-neutral model yields profound long-term biological and psychological benefits. So, this brings us back to the core philosophy of this entire protocol. Call a truce, stop the food fight. Seriously, give yourself unconditional permission to eat. It is time to lay down the exhausting weapons of diet culture. The restriction, the guilt, the constant mental math, it is entirely counterproductive to your longevity and your peace of mind. I'll leave you with this provocative question to ponder today. What would your life look like if you finally trusted your own biology? Just imagine the mental clarity, the focus, and the absolute freedom you would reclaim if you stopped fighting your body and simply started listening to it. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this empowers you to step into authentic, sustainable health.